On the morning of July 2nd, 1937, the world's most famous female aviator, Amelia Earhart, climbed into the cockpit of her Lockheed Electra 10E and vanished into the Pacific sky, never to be seen again. Her mission was simple in theory, yet monumental in scope: to become the first woman to fly around the globe along the equator. But somewhere between New Guinea and a small speck of land called Howland Island, Amelia and her navigator, Fred Noonan, disappeared without a trace. No wreckage, no bodies, no definitive explanation. And for nearly a century, the world has been haunted by the question: what really happened to Amelia Earhart? Before her disappearance became one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries, Amelia was a global icon, the embodiment of courage, independence, and defiance of limits. She was the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic, an author, a lecturer, and a symbol of modern womanhood. To the public, she was a fearless pioneer, but to those who knew her best, she was also a woman quietly at war with herself, driven by an unshakable need to go further, to see more, to push the edge of the possible. In her private letters, she once wrote, "Courage is the price that life exacts for granting peace." Perhaps it was that restless courage that led her into the sky for the last time, chasing not fame, but something more elusive. Immortality, perhaps. At dawn on July 2nd, Amelia's silver Electra stood ready on the tarmac in New Guinea. The plane gleamed under the tropical sun, its twin engines rumbling with anticipation. It was the 29th leg of her world flight, a 2,556-mile journey over open ocean to a tiny island just 2 miles long. Her navigator, Fred Noonan, was an expert in celestial navigation, a skill that required reading the stars to find one's position at sea. But on this flight, even Noonan's expertise would be tested. Their destination, Howland Island, was almost invisible, a pinprick in the Pacific, surrounded by thousands of miles of empty water. To guide her, the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca waited near the island, broadcasting radio signals to help direct her in. The last confirmed radio contact came at 8:43 a.m. Amelia's voice crackled through the static. "We are on the line 157337. We will repeat this message. We will repeat this on 6210 kilocycles. We are running north and south." And then, silence. No distress call. No crash transmission, just nothing. Within hours, the largest air and sea search in U.S. history was launched. Planes scoured the ocean, ships combed the waves, but there was no sign of Amelia Earhart, Fred Noonan, or the Lockheed Electra. At first, the world assumed the worst, that Amelia simply had run out of fuel and crashed into the ocean, a tragic end, but a plausible one. But as the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, questions began to surface. How could an experienced pilot, flying a meticulously planned route, vanish without a single trace of wreckage? Some claimed to have heard radio distress signals from Amelia's plane days after her disappearance, faint, fragmented messages picked up by amateur radio operators across the Pacific. One operator reported hearing a woman's voice saying, "We can't stay here much longer. Water's rising. Help us." Another claimed to have heard, "This is Amelia Earhart. We are on an island south of the equator." Were these genuine transmissions from her stranded plane, or the wishful imaginations of a desperate world? No one could say for sure. But for many, those mysterious signals ignited a chilling possibility: that Amelia didn't crash into the ocean at all, but survived somewhere. In the decades that followed, investigators, historians, and conspiracy theorists alike have pored over every detail of her final flight,
each trying to fill in the silence she left behind. Some believe she crash-landed on an uninhabited island, surviving for days or even weeks before succumbing to the elements. Others suggest she was captured by the Japanese military, mistaken for a spy in the tense years leading up to World War II. And a few even whisper of secret government missions, coded messages, and cover-ups, claiming Amelia's final flight might have been more than just a record-setting journey. To this day, no definitive proof has ever been found. The Pacific, vast and unforgiving, keeps its secrets well. And so, Amelia's story remains suspended between fact and legend, an eternal question mark in the sky. Soft ocean waves fade in. The horizon glows with dawn light. She once said, "Adventure is worthwhile in itself." Perhaps in her own way, Amelia found what she was searching for, a freedom beyond the edge of the map, a flight that never ended.
In the days following Amelia Earhart's disappearance, the world braced for news. Hope clung to every flicker of radio static. Yet, as the massive U.S. search operation unfolded, one theory began to dominate: the crash and sink hypothesis. This theory, simple yet haunting, suggests that Amelia and Fred Noonan ran out of fuel somewhere near Howland Island, plunging into the Pacific Ocean. A tragic accident, yes, but the devil, as always, lies in the details. The U.S. Navy, Coast Guard, and Air Corps quickly mobilized the largest search in history. Ships combed thousands of square miles of open ocean. Planes flew low, scanning the waves for debris. Even from the air, the Pacific seemed endless, a shimmering expanse that swallowed everything in its path. Yet, despite the scale and urgency, no wreckage of the Lockheed Electra was ever found. No emergency flares, no floating instruments, nothing. Some investigators suggested that if the Electra sank quickly, it would have left almost no trace. The ocean is merciless. But even so, the absence of wreckage left a gnawing doubt. Could it really be that simple? As the search continued, whispers of mysterious sightings began to emerge. One radio operator hundreds of miles from Howland reported hearing a woman's voice over the static, calling for help. Another claimed to see an unidentified plane in distress near a tiny island. Historians have debated these claims for decades. Were they genuine communications from Amelia and Fred, or the misinterpretations of anxious minds, desperate for hope? Complicating matters further were contradictory reports from the search teams themselves. Some pilots insisted they saw signs of a crash. Others reported nothing but calm, endless water. This growing tapestry of uncertainty only fueled speculation, leaving the world with a haunting question: what really happened to Amelia Earhart in those final moments? The crash and sink hypothesis, while widely accepted by mainstream historians, leaves critical gaps. Proponents argue that the Electra simply ran out of fuel before reaching Howland Island. The plane, heavy and unwieldy, would have plummeted into the Pacific almost immediately. Amelia and Fred, seasoned aviators though they were, could not have survived such a fall. Yet there is evidence that does not fully align with this narrative. Some of Amelia's final radio transmissions suggested she believed she was near land. Her reports mentioned islands, water, and bearings that do not perfectly match Howland's location. If Amelia had been off course, as some researchers suggest, she might have approached one of the many tiny uninhabited islands scattered across the Pacific, places so remote that even a plane crash could go entirely unnoticed. From this uncertainty emerged a new, more tantalizing theory. What if Amelia and Fred survived the initial crash? Amelia was known for her meticulous planning and her refusal to accept failure. Fred Noonan was one of the most skilled navigators of his time. Together, could they have found a way to land on a small island, clinging to life for days, perhaps even weeks?
Supporters of this idea point to faint radio signals received by amateur operators days after the disappearance. While these signals were never fully verified, they offer a chilling possibility that the Electra may have become a temporary island-bound vessel, a desperate lifeboat against the endless Pacific. Photographs from subsequent decades have fueled speculation, too. Some claim to have spotted aircraft wreckage on remote islands. Others report remnants of structures that could have been makeshift shelters. Each claim, however, remains unconfirmed, drifting in the gray space between hope and myth. As the mystery deepened, more unconventional theories began to surface. One of the most controversial claims suggests that Amelia Earhart did not crash at all, but was captured by Japanese forces. In 1937, tensions were rising across the Pacific. Japan controlled vast swaths of islands and military outposts. Could Amelia, straying off course, have been detained as a suspected spy? Proponents of this theory point to anecdotal evidence, reports from Pacific Islanders who claim to have seen a foreign woman in Japanese custody, vague government documents hinting at interrogations, and inconsistencies in official U.S. records regarding post-disappearance intelligence. Skeptics dismiss these claims as pure conjecture, an attempt to fill in the void left by a lack of physical evidence. Yet the allure of the idea is undeniable. It transforms a tragic accident into a gripping tale of intrigue, espionage, and international conspiracy. By the end of 1937, Amelia Earhart's disappearance had become more than a story of a missing plane. It was an enigma, a puzzle with pieces that refused to fit neatly together. Was it a simple crash into the sea, a desperate struggle for survival on a tiny Pacific island, or a sinister capture by a foreign power? The evidence, scant, conflicting, and tantalizing, leaves all three possibilities open. Slow fade to the horizon, the sun barely touching the water. In the Pacific, the line between reality and legend is thin, and as the waves whisper across the endless blue, one thing remains clear. Amelia Earhart did not simply vanish. She became a mirror for our curiosity, our fears, and our relentless search for answers in the face of the unknown.
For decades, the world has been haunted by the question, could Amelia Earhart have survived the flight, only to be stranded on a remote island, lost to history? One of the most enduring and compelling theories points to Gardner Island, now known as Nikumaro, a tiny uninhabited speck in the Phoenix Islands. Hundreds of miles from Howland, it is isolated, unforgiving, and almost invisible from the sky. Yet, for many researchers, it may hold the key to one of history's greatest mysteries. The theory emerged from meticulous analysis of Earhart's final transmissions, flight logs, and ocean currents. Investigators suggested that if she had missed Howland Island, a small but critical navigational error, she could have drifted hundreds of miles before crash landing on Gardner Island. The island's geography offered a tenuous lifeline. There were fresh water sources, beaches, and sparse vegetation, enough for two resourceful survivors to cling to life, at least temporarily. In 1940, the British colony that administered the island found skeletal remains of a castaway, along with remnants of a campfire and signs of human habitation. Some believed these could have been Amelia and Fred, yet forensic analysis at the time was inconclusive, leaving the evidence trapped in uncertainty. Over the decades, various expeditions to Nikumaro have uncovered fragments of mystery, tantalizing clues that suggest someone may indeed have survived there. Among the most compelling were pieces of aircraft aluminum, possibly from a Lockheed Electra. Bones discovered on the island in the 1940s, later re-examined with modern techniques, hinted at a woman of Earhart's stature and build. Additionally, faded artifacts, a sextant box, a shoe resembling those worn by female pilots in the 1930s, all hinted at the presence of a castaway skilled in navigation and survival. Yet, like much in Earhart's story, certainty remained just out of reach. Every clue opened doors to possibility, but closed them just as quickly with ambiguity. Local oral histories added further layers to the mystery. Islanders claimed to have seen a foreign woman living alone, building shelters and signaling passing ships. Some reported hearing the faint hum of an aircraft engine in the distance, long after the disappearance date. Skeptics argue that these accounts are unreliable, influenced by decades of storytelling and the global fascination with Earhart. But for those who study her disappearance, even a single fragment of oral testimony is precious, a whisper across the decades from someone who may have glimpsed the truth. In recent years, modern technology has rekindled hope of solving the mystery. Anthropologists and forensic experts have re-examined bones and artifacts using advanced methods, including DNA analysis. Yet challenges remain. The Pacific climate is harsh. Saltwater and tropical weather have eroded potential evidence. And without a definitive DNA sample from Earhart's family line, it is almost impossible to confirm any discovery conclusively. Still, the search continues. Each expedition to Nikumaro brings tantalizing hints, a piece of metal, a fragment of leather, a bone, that keeps the world asking, was she here? Did she survive? The beauty and horror of the Gardner Island hypothesis is that it is both plausible and elusive. Imagine this: two skilled aviators stranded on an island thousands of miles from civilization, fighting to survive. Days become weeks, weeks become months, yet the world moves on, unaware. And then the inevitable. One or both perish, leaving only whispers of their existence. Bones bleach in the sun, and artifacts slowly crumble into sand. For researchers, this haunting scenario is both tragic and tantalizing. It transforms Amelia Earhart from a vanished icon into a human story of endurance, courage, and the fragile boundary between survival and oblivion. Why does the Gardner Island hypothesis capture our imagination so vividly? Perhaps it is the tension between hope and despair, between fact and legend. Unlike the crash and sink theory, which offers a neat, albeit tragic, conclusion, Gardner Island keeps the door open. It allows for possibility. It allows for the idea that Amelia may have lived, if only briefly, in a place so remote that history almost forgot her. This theory also highlights something deeper about humanity's fascination with Amelia Earhart. Her story is more than a disappearance. It is a mirror for our own curiosity, our need to believe that even in the vastest expanse of the ocean, human courage and ingenuity can leave a mark, however faint, on history. Every artifact, every report, every fragment of evidence, no matter how small, becomes part of a larger narrative. Was Gardner Island her final refuge? Did she leave behind traces that will one day solve the mystery? Or are these remnants mere coincidences shaped by our desire to rewrite the past with hope and imagination? Slow fade to the empty horizon, waves gently lapping. In the Pacific, the line between survival and myth is fragile, and as the sun sets over the lonely islands, one truth remains. Amelia Earhart's disappearance is not just a story of loss, but a testament to the enduring power of mystery, the kind that refuses to be solved, no matter how deeply we search. While some cling to the Gardner Island theory, others looked further afield, to a far more unsettling possibility, that Amelia Earhart did not merely vanish into the Pacific, but fell into the hands of foreign powers. This is the Japanese capture theory, one of the most controversial and mysterious explanations for Earhart's disappearance. In 1937, the Pacific was a powder keg. Japan had already expanded into China and controlled a vast network of islands, including strategic outposts near Earhart's planned flight path. For an aviator like Amelia, straying off course could have been dangerous, but could it have been fatal in a different way? A capture, interrogation, and perhaps even imprisonment by Japanese military forces? Researchers point to a series of anecdotal reports from Pacific Islanders, fishermen, and local officials claiming that a foreign woman matching Amelia's description was seen in Japanese custody. Some described her being taken to nearby military bases. Others suggested she lived under guard for months. The evidence is murky, fragmentary, yet tantalizing enough to ignite speculation. The most dramatic claims of the Japanese capture theory involve possible U.S. government cover-ups. Some historians note that after Earhart's disappearance, certain intelligence reports were withheld from the public. There were alleged warnings about Japanese troop movements near the Phoenix and Marshall Islands. Some even claimed that high-ranking officials suspected she had been captured, but chose to keep it secret to avoid diplomatic fallout. If true, this would transform Amelia's disappearance from a tragic accident into a silent, politically charged drama, a story where secrecy and strategy overshadow human life. Yet critics argue that there is no smoking gun. Most evidence consists of anecdotal reports, conflicting testimonies, and alleged documents that have either been lost or remain classified. One of the most compelling pieces of circumstantial evidence is a photograph discovered decades after the disappearance. It shows a woman in what appears to be 1930s civilian clothing standing with Japanese military officers on an island in the Pacific. Researchers have debated whether this could be Amelia Earhart. The photograph is grainy, the identity uncertain, and skeptics are quick to dismiss it. But for those who study her disappearance, the image is haunting. It hints at a story that could have been written in shadows, one of survival under duress, and a life lived far from the public eye. Some theorists have gone even further, suggesting that Amelia Earhart's final flight was not merely a world record attempt, but a covert intelligence mission for the U.S. government. Proponents of this idea point to her advanced communications equipment, her route through politically sensitive areas, and the fact that her disappearance coincided with rising tensions in the Pacific. According to this theory, Earhart may have been gathering intelligence when she was captured, or perhaps betrayed. Her plane's disappearance could have been used as a cover for clandestine operations, leaving the world unaware of what really happened. It's a tantalizing notion, mixing intrigue, patriotism, and tragedy. But once again, the evidence is circumstantial at best. Even after World War II, rumors continued to circulate. Some former Japanese military officers claimed to have seen a foreign woman held on remote islands. Others reported that she had been released or died in captivity. Western intelligence archives contain mentions of unidentified Westerners on Pacific Islands, yet none definitively linked to Earhart. Documents remain classified, destroyed, or incomplete, leaving researchers to sift through decades-old fragments in search of the truth. What makes this theory enduring is not the clarity of evidence, but the consistency of whispers. Across decades, across oceans, the same shadow lingers. A woman in uniformed custody, lost in history's margins. The Japanese capture hypothesis resonates because it combines mystery, danger, and historical context. It transforms Amelia Earhart's story from a tale of navigational misfortune into a gripping drama of espionage, survival, and political tension. It also poses difficult questions. Could governments conceal the fate of one of the world's most famous figures? Could history be shaped not only by facts, but by what remains unspoken? And could the disappearance of a single woman reveal deeper truths about a world on the brink of global conflict? Slow fade over a darkened Pacific horizon, waves glowing under moonlight. In the end, Amelia Earhart's story may never be fully known. Whether lost to the ocean, surviving on a remote island, or entangled in a web of wartime intrigue, she remains a symbol, not just of flight, but of the mysteries that linger at the edges of history, where the known and the unknown collide.
Nearly a century has passed since Amelia Earhart vanished into the vast Pacific sky. Yet despite decades of investigation, search expeditions, and endless speculation, her fate remains a mystery. From the crash and sink theory to the possibility of survival on Gardner Island, and from whispers of Japanese capture to covert espionage speculation, each explanation offers tantalizing possibilities, yet none provide definitive answers. The crash and sink hypothesis remains the simplest and most widely accepted explanation. Amelia ran out of fuel and the Electro plunged into the sea. Its appeal lies in its straightforwardness, yet it cannot explain the mysterious radio signals or the absence of wreckage. The Gardner Island hypothesis suggests survival, however brief, on a remote atoll. Evidence, bones, artifacts, and eyewitness accounts fuels the imagination. Could Amelia and Fred have clung to life against impossible odds, only to succumb quietly in isolation? And then there is the Japanese capture theory, entwined with wartime intrigue and potential government secrecy. Rumors, photographs, and cryptic documents hint at a story far more complex than a simple accident. Each theory captivates because each leaves room for hope, for drama, for human resilience, but also for tragedy. In recent decades, technology has reignited the search for Amelia Earhart. Deep-sea exploration, metal detection, and satellite imaging have been employed to uncover any trace of the Electra or its passengers. Investigators have combed Nikumaroro for fragments of aluminum, tools, and even remnants of personal belongings. Some discoveries have sparked excitement, a piece of aircraft skin here, a bone fragment there, yet nothing has been conclusively linked to Amelia or Fred. Despite the sophisticated tools of modern science, the Pacific Ocean remains vast and relentless. It swallows evidence, erases footprints, and guards its secrets jealously. Amelia Earhart's story transcends aviation history. She represents courage in the face of fear, ambition against all odds, and the human desire to explore the unknown. Her disappearance amplifies this legacy. In the absence of answers, the mystery itself becomes her monument. It is a story that draws generations of researchers, adventurers, and dreamers into the sky, into the ocean, and into history's shadows. Her legacy is also a mirror for our fascination with the unknown, a reminder that even in an era of technology, science, and exploration, some truths remain tantalizingly beyond reach. Why does Amelia Earhart's story endure? Perhaps it is because the unanswered question of her fate resonates with something deeply human: the longing to know, the fear of loss, the hope that even in the vastest, most merciless expanses, courage can leave a trace. Every expedition, every investigation, every whisper from the past is a testament to that enduring curiosity. The search itself becomes part of her story, a reminder that some mysteries are larger than any single person, yet deeply intertwined with the human spirit. Imagine, for a moment, Amelia Earhart flying above the clouds, the endless Pacific below. Perhaps she glimpsed distant islands, stars guiding her way, wind carrying her forward. Perhaps she lived longer than anyone suspected, or perhaps the ocean claimed her immediately. We may never know the answer, and perhaps that is the point. In the mystery of her disappearance, Amelia Earhart became immortal, not just as a pioneer, not just as a pilot, but as a symbol of the unknown. Her story reminds us that some questions are meant to linger, some mysteries are meant to inspire, and some disappearances, no matter how tragic, can continue to illuminate the human imagination for generations. Slow fade to black, the sound of wind and distant waves persists, leaving a haunting echo. Amelia Earhart vanished, yet she remains in the sky, in the ocean, and in our endless search for the hidden truths.